The summer of 1960 was supposedly the vacation between my sophomore and junior years. However, my family owned a peach orchard. In the common slang of Northeast Texas, we would say we had a peach orchard. Most of the time, it remained to be seen whether we had the peach orchard or it had us. At 16, it was my personal opinion that the peach orchard was my personal and private prison. I usually got to the orchard at 5 a.m. We lived 26 miles from the orchard, and to be there at 5, I had to get up at 4 a.m. Summers in Texas have lots of daylight hours. I generally didn't make it home into bed until around 10:30 p.m. If I could get to sleep right away, I got 5.5 hours sleep. 16-hour workdays are common in the summer in rural areas and on farms. My mother was a school teacher and had to complete 6 weeks of education every so often to fulfill her teaching certificate requirements. So she was away at college. My father was a millwright for Lone Star Steel and had a considerable workload before he showed up at the orchard. Most of the time in the summer we spent working in the orchard alone or with my maternal grandfather. One especially hot day, my grandfather and I loaded one truck with peaches, and while he delivered that truck, I was filling the second. My father had worked the day shift and stopped to help fill the truck on his way home. It never occurred to me that he might be tired. We all worked all the time, and tired was not a condition that we acknowledged. The orchard was shaped like a large figure 8 that covered 18 acres. The rows from the top to bottom of that figure 8 we always referred to as the long rows. I was working on number 2 and 3 of those rows when my father arrived. He took a basket and started working on the short rows of the lower right-hand side of the figure 8. About an hour later, I was nearly at the top of the orchard when I realized my father was not with me. Occasionally in my life, my father had seizures. This condition was an absolute family secret. The condition of epilepsy was misunderstood in that area of Northeast Texas. If it had been known that he had epilepsy, even though his condition was well controlled, he would have been ostracized and not allowed to work in any profession that would make him any money. Ignorance of medical conditions and their causes leaves a void of knowledge in the minds of many people they rush to fill with prejudice and superstitious fear. With this in mind, we guarded this secret zealously. When my father did not answer my initial call, I looked down into the middle of the row and called quite loudly. Again, I got no reply. I became concerned, so I went down midway in the orchard and called again. Still, there was no reply. I became flat out scared and proceeded to run down to the far end of the orchard. I didn't see my father, but this time he answered my call. When I found him, he was sitting under a tree with limbs drooping from the weight of red and yellow overly ripe peaches hanging on it. Earlier in the week, I plowed the orchard with a flat-bottom plow. This action produced a roll of dirt nearly 2 feet high right underneath the tree. My father was sitting on this roll of dirt beneath this bounty of juicy peaches. Between his legs on the ground was a pile of peach peels and seeds approximately 8 inches high. It seems that while I had been dutifully picking peaches in an all-out effort to get the second truck loaded, my father had been enjoying a feast from one of the best trees in the orchard. First, I was relieved that he was okay. Secondly, I was determined that he was. After determining that he was okay, my fear turned to anger. It is quite true of many people that they do not start engaging their brain before they start speaking. I felt I had been slighted and that he had been eating peaches rather than helping me fill the truck. In a fit of teenage stupidity, I opened my mouth and in a critical tone said, "What are you doing?" There was a long moment of silence, during which my father reached up, took another peach from the tree, and leisurely began to peel it. He raised his left eyebrow, took my full measure before he spoke slowly, deliberately, and clearly. "Well, Rodney, I am down on my farm. I am in my orchard. I have my knife in my hand. I am underneath my peach tree, and I am sitting on my ass eating my peaches. Have you got anything else to say?" The instant my father started speaking, I knew I had crammed both feet in my mouth. Quietly, calmly, without raising his voice or belittling me in any way, my father chastised me as effectively as I had ever been chastised in my life. In answer to his question, I looked at him and said, "No, I think you answered every question I had." I then reached into my pocket, took out my pocket knife, sat down beside him, and said, "Hand me a peach." We spent a pleasant hour talking, laughing, resting, eating the best peaches I ever had, and we still got the second truck loaded with plenty of time to spare. My father has been dead now for 34 years. My memories of him are filled with love, kindness, and humor. Everyone fortunate enough to have known my father is a better person for knowing him. I would not be half the man I have become without his guidance and love. I miss him. God bless.